Sure, we're up to number 9, aren't we?
Yes.
All right, under planning, how do you structure planning and feedback at your school?
Okay, so we've got a few different ways that we do planning and feedback here. First, we allow our teams to get together vertically and horizontally in grade level teams and in content teams to do some MYP collaborative planning, to get feedback from one another on unit planning, and do some instructional consultancies where they can bring some plans forward or a problem forward and the team can give feedback. They also receive feedback from their peers through peer observation. So that's something new that Remy talked about this morning that we're doing in content teams. One of the things that's really good about that is our teams have already gone through observing each other and now they're branching out to other content areas. We noticed that teachers generally get stuck in the type of content and instructional practice that their content is most used to. And so now that they're branching out to other content areas, they're improving their practice. We give weekly lesson plan feedback via Blackboard. All that feedback is, we try to align it to the lesson plan rubric. That's also on iShine, I believe. And we have unit planning feedback that goes out once a month by me via Blackboard as well. And then, of course, our observation debrief.
How are you supporting the implementation of the Uplift curriculum and common resources where applicable?
So one thing I was really excited about this year was just that all of the plans are on Blackboard. So like the students like Maya or whoever sent that email to plot on people's classes, like I signed up for them. So one of the ways we do is that during IPDs, if we feel like there's some sort of gap or loose link, we say have you refer to the resources in your CTL and things like that. And we have access to those as well, so if you ever need to reference those. And then we are fortunate to have 6 CTLs on campus, especially early on during the year, just for how Uplift works or PEAK works. It was really good to leverage their expertise to support some of our new members.
All right, so we're going to jump back up and do data-driven instruction. How do you ensure that your teachers are developing rigorous, aligned assessments?
Mostly through the feedback that we give them via observation, which is our 3rd strategic priority, observation and feedback. Via lesson plan feedback, that's every week by Friday. They submit on Wednesday, and then via unit plan feedback. Now with at the end of September, every single MYP teacher has implemented one MYP assessment. Should have implemented one MYP assessment.
By what date?
End of September, around this time. I've already gotten a whole bunch of them. And that's, the rubric has them aligned to their standards as well as the MYP standards. And there's a tracking sheet and they check to make sure that they've done all those pieces.
How do you, this is back into planning, how do teachers plan for intervention?
It's through all the data analysis that they do. So our grade level teams analyze the intervention data weekly because they give weekly formative assessment, and then our content teams analyze it monthly. And each rotation is on a month cycle, and so before the next month's rotation, they make adjustments, and then adjustments weekly in grade level teams for every new group, every new ability group they're in.
So just to kind of add to it, so one of the things we are trying to further develop our interventions. We give our teachers a lot of latitude, but one thing that we do, the first month we got a lot of different types of data. We try to refine that a little bit. We still need a lot of different types of data depending on the grade level and different trends, different standards, and it all looks very different. But one thing that we do as an instructional leadership team, we come together each month and we look at trends, growth, flows, and trends. And this past month, earlier this week, we came together. I was pretty direct in terms of what direction I think some of those teachers need to take in terms of CRS and what needs to happen in intervention. So I don't know if that's happened yet, but I know this Monday we did have the conversation. So the conversation happens on different levels at some point during the month.
How do you ensure that your systems for planning, observation, feedback, PD, and DEI are all aligned?
Yeah, so I think that's where we jump in and we hold ourselves responsible for making sure all those things are aligned. So one of the things we do have is a meeting structure as a leadership team, where each week each dean hat is like on the highlight. And so they bring whatever's in their wheelhouse or their focus areas, they bring some sort of data point to that meeting, and it's usually around one of these things. And so we have a conversation on our level about what needs to happen or what needs our content team need to do, or our teachers and our coaching level, what they need to do, in order to make sure that we're all these things are working together.
Okay, awesome. How are you preparing your school for the next step in the IB process?
This is excellent, I just talked to Heather today, but I know that our evaluation visit's coming up. We were authorized in 2012, which means in 2017, January 2017, we're gonna be evaluated. Originally, I was operating under the assumption that we were gonna be evaluated in 2016. So I developed a 2-year backwards plan, which is the last page in those little red booklets that you guys have. Then I connected with Heather today, and we are actually going to meet on October 15th, where I'm gonna see how MYP was rolled out over there, be proactive about looking at some DP things, and have them look at our plan. I'm meeting with Carrie Mills, who's the MYP coordinator at the middle school here, to make this a 3-year backwards plan now, and then have Heather and her team sort of vet this fleshed out process for us. So it's a process, and we are focusing in on personal project, assessments and alignment, and then unit planning cross disciplines.
So our last couple questions have to do with college readiness. The first one is, how have you been able to incorporate RTC initiatives into your strategic priorities and PD this year?
We started the beginning of the year PD with having RTC come and talk about the initiatives to the staff and the goals. So the beginning of the year was kicked off with what are the big buckets that RTC is holding, and really this is the goal, getting all of our kids to college. On top of that, we made sure that our 9th grade professional communications class had more component of college and career readiness built into that. And our brand new 10th grade research and technical writing class is a bridge between professional communications and research and technical writing, and then college and career readiness. 10th graders never had a class like this before. I used to help develop this really great class for them. Going forward, we also got feedback from ISR last year that our students weren't owning the learning as much. People were going into classrooms and seeing that teachers are owning much of this learning right now. Enter the personalized education plan that Remy also mentioned this morning. Personalized education here is brand new. It's in its infant stage. It's a pilot. We're starting. Right now, students are working with their advisors to develop what their goals are. Their goals are broken up into 3 categories: academic, social, and leadership. Students also take a learning profile so that every teacher who has a touch point with that student knows how that student learns best. Throughout the year, every quarter, they have PEP talks, personalized education plan, PEP talks with their advisor to track their progress on these goals, as well as track their community service hours, so that their academic, social, and leadership component is really being addressed. All of these things, based on also persistence data, we know that they need help with this to help them really persist through college and make it out before 6 years. That's a big win for the network, right? So that's how we're incorporating RTC initiatives into our strategic plan.
Could you give some examples of how you've incorporated Conley's model of college readiness into your campus?
So we looked at the 4 areas of his plan: act, know, go, and think. And we really wanted to break it down and make it a little bit more presentable and user-friendly, we could say, to the students, to the parents, to our staff and faculty, and see how we can get support and what that really looks like on our campus. So when we look at this individual student, what different traits, what different skills do they need to have before they take off for college? So we came up with a list of different skills and responsibilities for each of these groups in order to support our students along the way. We have presented that very briefly to our teachers at the beginning of the school year, but we're going into quarter 2 with a little more force on that. So hopefully we will make a lot more progress on that.
And it's in you guys' book, it's our academic input.
Yes.
So it's
Page 8, or no?
And 9.
So you can see that visual of what we have done in order to bring it all together.
Outside of testing data and CRS, what other data points are you using to measure college readiness with your scholars?
Definitely the PEPs. That's one data point. I collect all of that at the end of every quarter. The first round of pep talks is actually happening the second week of October. So I'll have that information in for the first round of pep talks. We also do advisory walkthroughs at the end of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. There are 20-minute advisories that take place. Each grade level has designed their advisory to be specific to what students need in that grade level. So in 10th grade, they might be doing a little bit more circle talk during that time, or what is it called, student talk? Student circles. During that time where students are bringing ideas that they have to the group or concerns they have to the group, whereas in 12th grade, they might be doing student circles more of the time, really owning the conversation around advisory. So we do a lot of those walkthroughs. We try to get one in a week to collect data on that. And then the big thing is the college persistence data that we get from all of our seniors who have left and are in college. That data tells us a lot more about what we need to do here before we release them to the world.
With that, how is the Road to College team involved in the interventions process?
Well, GAP is a big part of that, obviously. I know you have probably all already heard about our group in academic probation. I work with students who are on academic probation at second level. So they would work with their grade level teams, their parents would get involved, and we have the parents coming once a week to support the students, and we have those conversations with them. We teach them different skills, how to support their kids from home, what to focus on, how to check their grades, all sorts of different topics that are covered. So as academic counselor and being a college prep, that is one of the big parts of what I actually do. So I monitor them closely. We know that the program is working. We have looked at our data from last year. We had a pretty high failure rate, especially in 9th grade last year. By the end of the school year, that rate was cut in half or more. And we didn't have any seniors going to summer school at the end of last school year, which was really a good step forward for us. That was the first year that we didn't have a single student waiting to graduate at a later date, and it was really amazing. We had in the mid-80s, 80% or so, 86% or so students who have successfully completed intervention by semester 1, and about 93% by the end of the school year. So we know the program is working. I have personally worked with a lot of other deans and academic counselors on other campuses, and I know they're trying to implement something similar this school year. And hopefully with all of that, we will also get some feedback as well and see what works for their campuses as well as ours, and be able to collaborate on that.
Thank you guys. That was our last scripted question, so we're gonna just open up the floor now to let the team ask clarifying questions of you guys based on what we've heard and what we've seen so far this morning.
So this morning we talked about use of last year's data to put the scholars into the ability groups for intervention. Will there ever be a point where the scholars' data will be looked at again, reorganize them, and at what
So
point?
actually, that was like, for us, as 9th grade, we had to use STAR data and much math data to do that. And it was hard. It was hard for our teachers to really figure out who scholars were, because that's some of the background information we had. So teachers, the teams make the decision on when to change up groups. I know the teams saw the recent in-class result data, and they haven't changed their groupings. So that was completely a team decision. What they've noticed is some groups, like, I know like the 2 middle groups seem to be faring fairly well, a little bit better than the other groups. They didn't have too many outliers. But I think the groups have decided to stick with this rotation. I know our seniors are going to change because they've already taken ACT already. So that group, they're going to actually do something they got the idea from Summit, where scholars select into what their interventions will be. There will be AP ones available, and then some other fun options or less AP-like options for scholars to go into.
Since we're going to be observing the intervention block coming up, what are things that we should be seeing in that particular class or look towards?
So, everything. Because it's so new. Like, they literally change from week to week. Someone will have like a great week and a great structure. If they say it's following the car, or the kids aren't invested or engaged, and then they have to change something. So honestly, just really looking at, I really would like to see scholar ownership in the process. I think that's probably the feedback we've gotten about some students just haven't found value in the idea of having an intervention. So I know that's something that I've heard throughout grade levels. So I think that just looking at scholar engagement would be one key thing, and just structures. Like looking for a structure that's winning, I think is what we're looking for as a team. So we can kind of model and practice.
Can you talk a little bit about the roles and responsibilities of either your grade level chairs or your content department leads? And are they getting support or coaching in a different way?
So if you look in the red book, there is meeting structures in there, which would have the grade level expectation, the grade level team expectations, and then the content team lead expectations. Dario and I are owning those two groups. So I'm taking content, Dario's taking grade level. Every other week, we meet with our respective group leaders to make sure that we're giving them specific coaching and facilitated leadership. There's a one-pager on facilitated leadership also in your red packet, and Dario and I are moving on a quarter, oh, sorry, I thought you said something. Moving on a quarter PD cycle for those teacher leaders. We started with how to set up meeting structures, how to make sure that you stick to your agenda and facilitate some buy-in in process. We're gonna move next on facilitating more buy-in with decisions that are being made, because we're seeing that decisions are being made, but not everyone's really buying into the process. So that's where we're moving towards for this next quarter.
And I think just to, on top of that effort, so like that was one thing that I released into my teams this year, is that those are their charges. I have a team, they need a team to kind of carry out their workload. But on top of that, just our instructional leadership team and with crucial accountability kind of as the anchor, that they're getting that coaching to kind of have those tough conversations. That's what we're looking to do as the year progresses.
I know you've got a lot of stuff you're talking about aligning your interventions to the EPA data. Looking at some of the data, like I noticed on your EOC, particularly the sophomores, so essentially the sophomores that are retaking English 1 EOC and the Algebra 1 scores a little bit lower, what's being done to go through and help go through and take care of the EOCs that are becoming that?
So that's a couple. So our ninth graders for Algebra 1 last year, most of our ninth graders were new to Peak Scholars. So it's kind of like a separate group of scholars. It was their first time taking a rigorous math class, in their academic career. So we anticipated same thing we saw in previous years, to have a good number of students who didn't pass. But our interventions for those scholars in particular, Mr. Ryan can speak to it better, I haven't done that, but that's still in your plan a little bit. They do have separate intervention structures that are specifically guided toward their retaking of the standards.
That's pretty much it. We've got Saturday school happening for English 1 and 2. We've got after-school tutoring on Mondays and Thursdays for the U.S. history, and we've got in school during intervention for Algebra 1 happening.
What are you all doing to support new teachers and also returning teachers for work-life balance and allotting time for planning and things like that?
So for new teachers, we actually have a teacher who's a second-year teacher here who actually kind of walks them through the process. So I was fortunate that she was a part of new teacher training, so she developed those relationships with the teachers early. And so I know she's doing like bi-weekly follow-ups with them and things of that sort. I also have another teacher who wants more leadership opportunity, who's not currently a teacher leader, who wants to have some more coaching opportunities, with teachers and how to increase either engagement or just classroom culture. And so giving him some at-bats is supporting those teachers as well. They are currently on all of our teaching loads, and so they do meet with us, and we definitely have a few more touch points with them than probably some of our teachers who've been here. So I think that kind of covers the new teacher. Our assistant teachers and work-life balance, so that's like the question mark, one more question mark, because this is new for us in terms of having the 90-minute period. So that means a huge shift for teachers who hadn't taught in the block scheduling. So I think there's some adjustments in terms of planning that looks different. So they probably can't rely as much on previous lesson plans, and they're having to recreate those. So their value, the value that they, or how often they seek out CTL plans is mixed, in terms of how they're using those. So they're really some of them creating things from scratch. So this year feels a lot different and a lot heavier. However, some of those teachers have much more planning time than they had in the past. And so some of our teachers' goals are tied to, and their development goals, really how do you use some of this time on the ground. So we'll be working with them, those teachers who we've identified. I know Samina had, I keep looking at her, she's got more teachers who fall in that category than I do, in terms of working on their work, like, well, you know what I mean, like they've identified those as problem areas. So we're gonna work through some of those things. So it's question marks because we're trying to figure out how to best support them and reaching that goal.
We also took into account the network push regarding like teacher duties outside the classroom. We really made a point that all of our teachers are relieved of all extra duties if we can handle that. Each one of us takes lunch as a lunch duty, and we take support staff from the office to handle lunch duties. So none of our teachers have a lunch duty this year. So we really made a conscious effort this year to relieve some of that stress from our teachers.
You said that teachers had more planning time this year, so out of the 4 90-minute blocks that they have on the, well, I guess there's 8 in the ABC ones, how many are they generally teaching?
So the 11th and 12th, it gets a little weird because some teach 11th and 12th, so they have a little fewer blocks in time. So like a 9th grade or 10th grade teacher would probably teach 4 sections, like between the 2 days, and they'd have 2 interventions, like an intervention and A and B day.
And we try to balance that with advisors. So if you're an advisor, you might not have an intervention.
So are you counting the intervention as one of the 90-minute blocks or no? It's an additional.
It's 35 minutes,
Okay. So they have, if they're teaching 4 90-minute blocks over the 2 days, then does that mean they have 4 90-minute blocks for planning?
Should be.
Ish, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just depending on that intervention, just keep that.
got it, okay.
So I have a question, but it kind of goes back to the classroom knowledge from my voice. What expectations have you all set as a leadership team for how scholars should respond to questions in class?
We haven't, right?
There's no uniform.
There's no
method.
uniform method.
Yeah, it's just through coaching and feedback individually.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I push my teachers that I coach to follow the complete sentence response. If I notice that, I'll note that in the outshine and put action steps into place if I'm seeing that's not happening. But as far as that's the only one that
I was wondering if you could speak to the support you've given teachers with adjust.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
We couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry.
What support have you given teachers so far with adjusting to a 90-minute block?
So at the start of the sports in here, start of the school year, Stephanie Rubenfeld came and did a PD with our teachers about like ways to maximize that 90-minute class period. Other than that, hasn't been anything formal that we've done to this point in that PD. We're kind of using this as like an idea, like if we give you feedback around that, to kind of figure out which direction to go with.
That's my questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
So, I mean, earlier you mentioned that y'all looked at retention data from the alums.
Persistence data.
Oh, yeah, and you said like that, guys, what were some of your big findings from looking at the persistence rates?
So it all depends on the class, graduating class. We have seen that we had a couple of graduating classes where our students are really struggling to, stay enrolled in college. And so what we have done, we are really keeping an eye on individual alums and making sure that we are staying in touch with them and pushing them to re-enroll if they're dropping out for whatever reason. We have found that we have a significant number of students who are not continuing their education because of health issues or pregnancy or something that is really not under our control, nothing that we can do about that. So we are trying to find different ways to re-enroll them for flex terms or to make sure that they have a plan a year from now when they can go back to school. And so,
I was just gonna add that, so last year, one of the best pieces of data that I got my hands on was a report that the RTC annual report, where they went through some of the reasons that scholars from uplift schools that they struggle with the transition to college. And so one of the things in terms of creating that academic impact model, like some of the things that we were successful in placing into a credit bearing class, like that's how he aligns the particular curriculum. And just the push around, like, something we haven't done, but it is in our model, just research writing. Like, I know we haven't talked about, I talked about with a number of teachers, about like how we wanna make sure our scholars are able to write substantial or really high quality research papers by the end of this journey here in FAE. So using that kind of like data from that report, like I think it's still good to kind of drive the push that we have to make in the classroom with our teachers. It's also going to help.
Really listening to them, just going through those basics and asking them, if you were still here, knowing what you know now, what type of support would you like to have, or what type of courses would you like to take? And we have involved a handful of our alumni over the summer to reach out to those who are not here and really make those connections. So we're utilizing them to make those connections with the other alumni, so they listen. It's different when your peer reaches out to you with a certain question versus a school director or a dean.
For a follow-up, just so it seems like one of the stuff that y'all doing now based on that is like with the current kids is the math thing, where y'all like 3 or 4 of the other just big stuff.
Yeah, so like PEPs are big, come out of that too. So for example, a lot of our kids, when we ask them, what do you wish would have happened here now that you're out? So like, I wish we wouldn't have had our hand held so much. And so it's all about helping students really create this love of learning and drive them their own education. And so if they know what their learning styles are, they can advocate for that type of instruction in the classroom. If they know that their teachers are going to just check in on them every quarter about whatever goals they've set around leadership, socially, and academically, they sort of drive what action steps they're going to set up to make some progress on those goals. And so these small measures, including or increasing academic talk in the classroom, complete sentences, all of these small things we're hoping will address a lot of the things we're seeing from our alums.
And the data,
Go ahead.
And the data that Samina is collecting through advisories with the teachers when they're having these pep talks will be entered into our Navion system, so that as we are doing counseling on our college counseling end, we can refer to that and find the best fit schools for our students and make sure that they're getting into the right programs based on their learning styles, based on their interests and such.
So we're gonna call time there, just so that we can get into our next observations, but thank you all so much. And we're aiming to be ready to go at 4:30 for your debrief. All the ISRs seem to be moving on a little bit faster than this year, which is good. So I'll find you ready to go, like we're later, but we'll plan on some 4:30.
Great, thank you.
Okay, for everybody here,